Oh my gosh, he's here. Oh. I decided to move Nemo. So I was living out in Colorado and I was in college. Right now I have a ton of chronic illnesses, so I had to leave to go back home to California to sort out my medical issues and get a treatment plan all set up. So part of this involved bringing my horse Nemo from Colorado to California. Nemo is 7 years old, he's still young, he's still green. So I was very worried when moving him that it was going to create a really big issues for him. So for my first hack, I decided I was going to do it out in the open air dressage court because he's never been in a covered arena to my knowledge. I was going to ride him in a long frame. I wasn't going to care too much about what he does with his head and stuff, really just trying to push him forward and ask him, hey, focus on me. Don't focus on the other things, because the reality is that's what's going to happen when we start showing, and I plan to start showing him soon. So I viewed this hack as a practice run for the first hack when you haul into a show. I was super impressed with how he did. In my opinion, the long frame really helped him because in the beginning of the walk, I let him look around at everything, and then I still kept him in a frame. However, it was super long, so if something worried him, he could pick his head up, look around. And I did let him look at stuff for a little bit, and then I would gently, with my inside leg and outside hand, ask him, hey, can we get some bend? And if he wouldn't listen, or if he was too distracted, then I would use my inside rein and ask for a little bit of flexion, just to bring his attention back towards the inside of the arena. Because while I trust him, he can be a bit spooky, so I'm not gonna let him stare at anything for too long and then create an imaginary problem or a very real problem and think he needs to bolt. A lot of these first rides are going to be in the Dijon set. I know a lot of people don't like the Dijon set, but that was the first set I actually tried him in. So I figured we need to stay on brand, stay on theme, and do the same thing. I personally love it. I don't understand why people don't like it, but I am a strong yellow girly, so. For Nemo's first hack at the new property, I rode him in a long frame because I wanted him to relax into it. I was more focused on him being able to work the next day after moving as opposed to working him up and back. Now, right here, he tosses his head as I ask him to turn down center line, which isn't good. However, as you can see, he relaxes into it once we're actually down center line. So the first trot was pretty good. I said I was going to show the good and the bad, so here's the bad. We leave the dressage court because I didn't have enough outside rein or leg. We go back and do the corner a second time, and it was okay, but much better than last time, and that's all we're looking for during this ride. What I've learned with having a young horse that I'm trying to train ethically is that we're not necessarily looking for the best work all the time. We're just looking for it to be better than it was before. Here I attempted a 10-meter half circle. However, it did end up being more like 12, but I was really happy that he kept himself more connected and didn't try and flip his head up to evade the bit like he did on the first turn down center line. Here, the donkeys were making a ton of noise, and he's never heard a donkey before, so he was super nervous, but he didn't run, he just tried to look, so I was still pretty happy with how brave he was being. To give him something else to focus on besides the donkeys, I asked for some flexion here, and he was so good. At the walk, you can see how well he relaxed into the new environment. Once again, I have him in a long frame, just looking for him to be relaxed, although towards the end, we got some nice up and back work, which was so nice. The next canter transition doesn't look perfect, however, it was supple and automatic, so I was so happy. You can actually hear me scream, good boy. Because he surprised me with such a good transition, I stopped to give him a treat. One of the ways I'm training him is positive reinforcement. Because he was such a good boy, I decided to end the ride right there. His first jump lesson was a bit interesting. The ring is a bit smaller than he's used to, so we really had to focus on straightness and stuff like that. First time I jumped him, I took him over some fences. I don't remember how tall they were probably like 2 foot. So just little speed bumps just to get him thinking about jumping again. Because while I'm out here on my good days, I plan to show him in the jumpers and dressage with maybe a hunter derby or 2 thrown in there. Because his jump position is pretty cute over the fences when he wants to be. So I'm hoping as we're building more muscle and training him that he's going to be able to really rock back and go knees to nose over the fences. We did have some hiccups with the first jump lesson. It's definitely not my best, but I was pretty nervous because it was the first time that this trainer had seen this horse, had seen me ride a horse that I'm familiar with, and had seen me ride a horse at home. So I was super nervous, to say the least. Show pressure generally doesn't get me, but home pressure absolutely does. Overall, with his performance, while it wasn't great, it did show my trainers what I saw in him, because even though he's young, he's a bit irritable, he's excited, he really wants to go forward. When I did make mistakes, I didn't get the best distance, or at one point he overjumps the fence, so I kind of sit on his back and get a little bit launched. He doesn't take offense to it. He's just like, oh, okay, let's keep going, dude. Which I think is really telling about his brain. I was really happy that my trainers got to see that. And this was the first fence he ever jumped at the new barn. He jumped it pretty well. I was super proud of him. Here we were just focusing on straightness because he absolutely loves to leak out the shoulder, and I was so proud of him for how he jumped that one. It was super cute. I'm honestly considering taking him into a couple hunter derbies. We came in really tight to this one. You're gonna see here we get a big chip, but I was still proud of him because we kept straight and he took the distance even though it was bad. I'm trying to build a horse that will go from any distance because no one's perfect and we all mess up the distance sometimes. This was a gorgeous transition. Once again, happy he's relaxing into a different environment. And here, this was not great. He decided to overjump it, but it's okay. So we went around and did it a second time where he jumped it much nicer. Going around this turn and to the butterfly oxer, I'm once again looking for straightness and an even pace. We get really close to this fence, but he still takes a distance and keeps all the poles up. I absolutely love how he jumped this fence. It had a great distance. He really picked his front end up and picked his hind end up. Super cute. Now we're going around to this line and we're gonna cut it really close again. He kind of gets a little buried, so I move him up for the 5 and we get a great distance. He somehow knocks the grounding pole, but not any of the other poles. Don't know how, he's just a magical horse. Once again, we jump this fence super cute, and then we're gonna come around to the line. The issue is the first fence in the line is so small that he doesn't even register it as a jump. So he doesn't really listen to me when I try and set him up for a good distance. He just kind of goes for it. We consistently get good distances to fences when they go up a couple holes. But overall, I was really impressed with how mature he was being for me in this lesson. For my first dressage lesson, I would say it was definitely the worst out of the 3 because we immediately started picking at something that I know he has problem with. 3, because whenever you're asking for a horse to switch their bend, you want them to come off of your old inside leg, and then as you switch, go off of your new inside leg. For some reason, whenever we put my new inside leg on with Nemo, as we're switching bend, he tries to come up like a giraffe and he wants to look around to the outside to see what's going on the outside. It definitely has some ugly moments, but you'll see towards the end he really starts to get it, and that just goes to show how great his brain is. I know I constantly talk about it, but I genuinely think it's like the most important thing. It's really hard, in my opinion at least, to train a horse to have a good brain as opposed to just getting one who does. This ride started out a little rough. He was aggressively trying to throw his head around everywhere because we were working on change of direction, which he's not super solid in. However, you can see we're going from tracking right to tracking left, and during the actual change of bend he was really good here, so I still consider that a positive. He reached for the contact here, so I pushed him up to the canter. Now he did pop his head up in the transition. However, he was super supple in his body, so I was still pretty okay with it. He's always such a good boy when I ask him to trot on the buckle after the canter. We're doing this to try and build his muscles up. The trot through this corner was pretty good. He's starting to reach under himself and we're starting to build his ability to track up and rock back on his hind end. I found this canter to be pretty mediocre. I mean, he was trying to stretch down, but he wasn't engaging his hind end as much as I would like. The down transition was pretty good, and as you can see, once again, he's super stretchy and perfect because he just wants to be such a good boy. I was really happy with this walk here because in my opinion, it's one of the hardest gaits to get right, but afterwards, the outside world was far more important. Once I was able to get his focus back to the center of the ring, we got more good trotting shots. And then he, of course, threw a temper tantrum. But once we worked through it again, he was really, really good at the trot. I prepared to go to the canter, and he had a decent transition, but you see he comes back really nicely. Once again, another canter transition here. It was at the end of the lesson, so he was getting tired. That's why I reached so far back with my spark. However, we ended with a really nice change of direction. So while there were some bad parts, we were focusing on change of direction, and he did really great with that. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, and if not, don't die out there.